Welcome to Gourmet Brewing. I'm your host, Doug Piper, and I want you to know how much I appreciate your allowing me to join you as we grow our beverage skills together. We're going to go live at the bottom of the hour, but I really appreciate you joining us early. We've got several things going on down here at the bottom. There is a chat screen, which I would love for you to take advantage of, and right over there, kind of where you're joining us, I see... Rodrigo Silva looks like is from Oka, Chile. Wow. Peter from Australia. Peter's done another webinar. Hey, Peter. It's good to see you. We've got a good crowd there, so if you don't mind marking in there what we've got going on. I'm going to bring Andrew on screen, but we have Andrew Luberto. And let's get you up full screen, Andrew. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Are you doing good?
Yeah, I'm doing excellent. How about yourself?
Awesome. So, Andrew, you know this well because you've done the webinar, but for those that have joined early and those that maybe have not done one of our webinars before, we have down here the Ask a Question field. We also have the polls. Looks like we got 3 questions already. Missoula, Montana. Well, welcome, Elizabeth. So far, Andrew, in our poll, why are you considering becoming a BJCP judge? The majority so far say I'm interested in properly evaluating or judging beer, mead, or cider. Brewing is secondary.
Well, that's a good motivation.
There we go.
You're in the right place.
Oh, good. So we will keep going through that. Looks like we've got 3 questions there. HomebrewCon, that was such a great time to actually put a face with a name. You and I talked any number of times on the phone and in the webinars, but wasn't HomebrewCon a blast?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was happy to see a lot of Mead presenters there, and also working with the American Mead Makers Association. I was very happy to see that.
Yeah, Laura Ngati is we're talking to her and AHA on doing a webinar with her in conjunction with AHA. So cool. No final content there. And last week we had Michael Fairbrother.
I saw, yeah.
And that was fun.
Yeah, he's such a great speaker.
He really is.
He really fires you up,
It was a lot of fun. I had quite a bit of drama, though, trying to get my calibration mead. They were all sold out of that particular mead. I don't know whether it was the webinar or what, but anyway, I went to go get one, and I had to drive about an hour and a half, and had a guy meet me one with so I could have it for the webinar. So I guess it was my fault, but that was.
You had to find the guy. He had to drive like in the back of his trunk or something.
Exactly.
You met him on the internet. Oh man.
But I said, man, I can't do this in front of Michael. We had this plan for like 2.5 months. Mm-hmm. So I had 2.5 months to get a mead. And it was awful. But anyway, got to meet some new people in the process, and they actually want to do a webinar on persimmon wine.
Okay.
So I don't know. We may that'll be an interesting exploration if we do that.
Sounds cool.
But you have a huge crowd. Look, we've got over 100 people tonight. So this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to this.
Me too.
So what did you enjoy most about HomebrewCon, Andrew? I'm going to click a button here on something that is not lit up that I would like to have lit up.
I got to do. I was asked to do best of show for beer, and that was a lot of fun. So I was at a table. Randy Scorby, Agatha Feltis, Steve Piatz. I'm trying to think if there was anybody else. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody. But that was really cool. So picking the best beer in the country through national homebrew competition. That was really exciting for me.
That's fantastic. Well, that was my very first HomebrewCon, and I did get to judge all the sessions, which was a lot of fun, but I wasn't invited to Best of Show. How many judges did they have for Best of Show?
Was it 4 or 5? I must be missing someone.
Okay.
But yeah, and then they had the Mead Best of Show, cider Best of Show. But beer takes a lot longer. But it was I was very honored that they asked me. So it was a very cool experience.
I was honored to get chosen for the North Carolina Brewers Cup, which is the best beer in North Carolina, last weekend.
Oh, nice.
And English Golden won first place. Isn't that interesting?
That's very cool.
But it was phenomenal. It was absolutely worth it. Well, Andrew, we have about little over a minute before we will go live. Again, I would ask everybody to just take advantage. We have the Ask a Question down there at the bottom of the screen. We also have the poll, which we would appreciate your input on. And even if you have to leave early, Andrew will answer your question. And the cool thing is when you ask a question, you actually get an email with a link directly to that portion of the webinar where your question was answered. So you can skip all the stuff that was before that if all you really want to know is Andrew's answer. So please take advantage of the Ask a Question. That is, for me, it's the best part of the webinar because Andrew, our audience, as you know from the first webinar, just can ask some really fantastic questions.
Yeah.
The other point is, if you're not ready to ask a question, but you want to make sure one gets top priority, you can vote. So if Andrew ends up getting a whole bunch of questions there, vote. And if you see a question there you like, vote it up there to the top. And again, I would encourage you to use the chat on the left. So we're just a few seconds from going live. So one moment. Welcome to Gourmet Brewing. I'm your host, Doug Piper, and I want you to know how much I appreciate your allowing me to join you in growing our beverage skills together. I'm a certified Cicerone and a certified BJCP judge, and I'm working on advanced ranks. And the BJCP Facebook study group and these webinars are my way of sharing what I'm learning on my beverage journey. Now, it's been a few weeks since the webinars were kind of going fast and furious. Our summer, I guess the early part of the summer sort of ended with Peter Simons on Australia as Peter would say, sparkling ales. And actually, Peter's joining us today in today's webinar. It's this morning, I think, where he is. We just recently had a webinar with Michael Fairbrother on Mead. If you missed it, just check out that and the rest of the program. And frankly, the easiest way to do it is up there at the top of the screen. There is a follow button. If you'll just click on that, that'll give you notifications. It will also give you access to all the previous webinars. You may have noticed that I'm referring to the channel more as Gourmet Brewing and not just the Beer Judge Certification study groups. That's because I'm expanding the programming. I've had a lot of people say that good beer brewers also make great coffee brewers and tea brewers and kombucha brewers. And we already know we make good mead brewers and cider brewers. So I do want to expand it. I think everybody that pursues this is really a gourmet in the vein that we do this. So I think gourmet brewing is very fitting. If you have suggestions or comments, I would appreciate hearing them because this is all about all of us and our journeys together. Today we have Andrew Luberto, and Andrew is an advanced Cicerone, and was recently awarded the rank of BJCP Grandmaster 2. He is an awesome teacher and a new friend to me, a great supporter of the BJCP study groups. And Andrew presented actually in our second webinar, I think it was in December, and covered maximizing your tasting exam score sheet. So welcome, Andrew. Welcome to to Gourmet Brewing. How was HomebrewCon? I'll try and get that correct.
Thanks for having me, Doug. I've been following and watching your growth of your webinar, of your show here for the past 10, 11 months. It's pretty impressive, I got to say.
Well, it's a ton of fun, and I've gotten to meet so many people. And actually, it was just fabulous at HomebrewCon because I've got to meet a lot of the other folks who've been watching the webinar. Not only you, and then a lot of the BJCP senior leadership. So that was a lot of fun, and not to mention a lot of good beer and a lot of great judging experience.
Mm-hmm.
What was there? You had said a little bit before that you got to do best of show. Can you tell a little bit more about that at HomebrewCon?
Yeah, at the end of every homebrewing competition, there's a best of show table that you get to choose the winner of the competition. Usually it's first, second, and third. But for HomebrewCon, it's for National Homebrew Competition. It's just you just choose one, which it was really hard. There was some really, really excellent beers there, but I was with some really experienced, top-notch judges. So it was honoring and humbling at the same time. So it was a very cool experience.
So Andrew, we're talking about an introduction to BJCP judging. Is judging at HomebrewCon and getting to do best of shows sort of what your goal might be if you want to get as far as you can?
I think your goal should be. I think your goal should be to set whatever personal challenge you want for yourself, and then embark on that process. So I think that should be your goal. Taking the first step and then working towards that.
Well, could you, as we talk about that, just tantalize us just a little bit about what we're going to hear today from you?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. But so it's BJCP Beer Judge 101. I was talking with you at HomebrewCon, talking with Doug at HomebrewCon, and Doug had mentioned that he was looking for someone to do like an introduction to the BJCP, something like intro level. And I kind of remarked to him, I was like, oh, I thought I did that my last webinar. And he's like, no, you didn't. I was like, oh, all right. And at the same time, over the summer, I've been holding one of my judge prep classes. And at one point, like I kind of remember you said this, we had this discussion, and I sat down and I one-on-one, I talked to each of the people in the class, the students in the class, and I go, so where are you? Where are your questions? And what's going on with you in the process? Let's talk. And the questions I was getting and the feedback I was getting, it was just like, wow, you don't realize how much you take for granted that people know, you know what I mean? You think just things like you've heard, you've been in the program 11, 12, whatever years, and you're very active, and you just take things for granted. Like, I thought everybody knew this, and they really don't, you know what I mean? People are, as they're getting introduced to the program, there's a lot of questions about stuff that I think that a lot of us probably find simplistic or common knowledge, but it's not. And I think that conversation with you and that conversation with my students is when I emailed you and I said, you know what, I think this is a really good idea. Let's answer some really basic questions, some really introductory questions for someone who is not a judge or is kind of like, wait, what's the BJCP? So that's what this webinar is geared towards. It's geared towards people who are not in the program, people who might have kind of sort of know what being a beer judge is, or someone who is kind of piqued their interest and they've seen people do it, or maybe they have friends doing it and they're not kind of 100% sure what it is. So this is really kind of covering those fundamental introductory bases. That's what I set out to do. So if you're I gotta say, we have 116 people. I think that's great. If you're a certified judge, we're going to be covering stuff I'm pretty sure you probably already know. So this is really kind of geared towards people who haven't taken the online exam yet, or maybe maybe are provisional judges and haven't taken the judging exam yet. People who are very green and new. So kind of going off of that, you have the ask a question on the bottom. I just want to say that whatever question you want to ask it. It's please don't feel that it's something silly or ridiculous. I know how hard it is to kind of put yourself out there sometimes. But yeah, please ask anything. That's what this is for. We specifically said that we use that phrase "no judgment zone," on purpose. So.
Well, and in the poll, it reflects that, Andrew. In the question of why are you considering becoming a BJCP judge, whether that be beer, mead, cider, the majority, vast majority, 55% say I'm interested in properly evaluating or judging beer, mead, cider. Brewing is secondary. We have 0 votes for I'm only interested in attaining beer geek status and drink all the free beer.
Yeah, there's a lot better ways to get free beer than embark on this process. We'll give you free beer, but you have to write a score sheet on it.
Yeah, a lot less writing.
For every ounce you drink. Like, I don't know if that's an even trade.
Well, I'm really looking forward to that. But before we move into the webinar, I know there's a number of people here that have never joined one of these webinars. They may be unfamiliar with this. And I want to make sure you know, first of all, even though we go by the BJCP study group as a study group, we are not official BJCP, and I am not speaking for the BJCP, and neither is Andrew. So these are all our own personal opinions. I want to remind you that if the webinar is not playing properly, that chances are a refresh on your screen will fix all that. So just click and do a refresh. If you can't hear, just double check that the mute or your speakers is not an issue. We have some more webinars. I have been busy, even though it wasn't producing webinars during the summer. We have a number of webinars coming up. John Blickman is going to be coming up talking about sizing your brewery. Jennifer Pereira is going to be speaking on diacetyl. We've got Dr. Mark Roshman coming up, also Ron Pattinson, Travis Rupp, and believe it or not, there are more. So we're going to have a great time now that the summer is over. I don't know, I wish I could tell you which webinar was going to be which day, but I do work with all the speakers to get really the best time because we have to kind of work with their schedules. And the great thing about this is you can always catch the replay anytime you would like. We have the ask a question button down there at the bottom. Please enter in the polls as we talked. In the chat screen, that's a great place to share and talk amongst you. We're trying to be a group here, so if you will chat there in the screen, you see somebody. I see somebody from Concord, North Carolina, Tucson, Arizona. If that's somebody you know, please be sure to chat to them there. These are part of a series of webinars I'm creating to help the BJCP study groups that I'm a part of. If you're not a member yet and are interested in exploring the journey of becoming a beer judge, whether that be advanced or other levels, just search Facebook for BJCP 101, 201 Mead. Please be sure to answer all of the membership questions. There are 3, and you will not get in without answering all 3 questions. They're not hard, but you'd be surprised how many people don't answer them, and it's important that we keep the group properly with the right people who want to be in there for the right reasons. These webinars are not free. They are to you, but there's actually a cost to me to produce these webinars. Andrew and I actually donate our time, but the equipment and the technology is not free. So if you feel like this is worth a beer, buy me a beer. Any amount is appreciated, and as a group, it helps offset my direct costs. I have some regular Patreon supporters. Patreon is a great way to do this. Andy Glidden, Brent Dingus, Clay Bunn, Dan Sakai, Gene Jockey, Jerry Pringle, Marino Lozana, and Paul Clammer are all regular Patreon supporters, and that is a big help. Okay, everyone that registered will get an email with a link to the recording, any slides, and the previous webinars, and I will also include links to all 3 Facebook groups. Now, we've gotten beyond all of that stuff. I want to introduce our speaker, which is why everyone is here. We have Andrew Luberto, and my screen just disappeared here, so I'm sorry. Clearly, I am dependent on that. All right. So there we are.
I think this happened last time I was on too.
Yeah, no pressure. You're doing it again. So let's move on to our program. 3 not so easy steps, and we're going to start with a unique commercial calibration. This is a bit unusual, isn't it, Andrew?
Yeah, well, maybe for you, maybe for the show, but yeah, this is what I usually do in my classes. So I've been watching the show, and I know that you do the commercial calibration at the beginning, which is great. I mean, that's definitely a skill and something to do. But generally, what I tell people to do, and you sent that link to the ASBC flavor maps.
Yep.
Instead of me trying a beer and prattling on and seeing if you guys agree with it or not, I would much more encourage you to look at the different flavor maps. There's 4 of them, and depending on the beer you're drinking, maybe try to think about it and try to start identifying what some of the flavors are that you're getting in aroma. And
Andrew, you want me to bring it up on screen so everybody knows what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
This is one. You got one of them.
Yeah. I have the beer flavor map.
Yeah. This is really good for Mead too.
All right. So everyone should be able to see it now. Yeah.
I mean, this is a little tough for, for malt, but this is definitely great, for all flavors and really good for hops as well. I find this is pretty good. Those cereals pretty good as well. And then they have other ones, as well. So I got here the specialty malt map. This is really good, as well. And then the base malt flavor map as well. So I have a link to it in my slides. I'll post the slides, and you'll be able to. It's a little pricey. It's like $70 for all 4 of them, but you have them, you laminate them. And I think they're a really, really good study tool and a really, really good tool for developing your vocabulary. So I would recommend that, going through and, try whatever beer you're drinking, beginning to identify, starting the process of beginning to identify characteristics, I think is.
So Andrew, could you explain a little bit just how you use them? I mean, it's a pretty busy chart. It's not terribly intuitive.
Yeah, right. So it's kind of, a lot of times we use these descriptors when we're judging. We'll use fruity or floral, bready is another one, citrus, and so what this does is this begins to kind of break that down a little bit more and it sharpens up your vocabulary, makes it just a slightly more precise. And again, there's 4 of these, there's the beer flavor one, and then there's hop flavor, and then there's base malt flavor, and then there's specialty malt flavor. So it gives you ideas. It's not natural. It's not natural, but it's not a not an inherent thing that we can do cognitively, which is to put words to the flavors that we're perceiving. It's something that takes work, and you kind of have to create those neurological pathways. So this kind of helps in that. It's just like, all right, I think I'm getting kind of citrusy. Well, all right, grapefruit, orange, lemon, lime, you're getting rind. I actually had someone in one of my classes who I mentioned this so many times that they actually went out to the supermarket and they bought a whole bunch of different types of fruits, because they kept, and they tried like, okay, so what does like a Bosch pear versus an Asian pear taste like actually, so I could actually use that type of vocabulary in my writing. So
where do you get baby vomit?
Where do you get from what do you get from? Usually butyric acid. So.
Well, I have one that I use myself. It is a little challenging to use, I think, sometimes because I wish it were a little more intuitive, but it's got a list of just about everything. So it's a great tool.
Yeah.
Well. So you would just use this. So if we had a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale,
okay,
you would start out looking maybe in this fruity section and clicking off and see, okay, well, there's grapefruit, there might be some lemon, there might be some lime.
Yeah, so just checking that off, just starting that process. If you're new to being a judge, this can seem wildly overwhelming. I remember in the first class this year for this class, we sat down with the first beer, and I was just walking through the mechanics of trying a beer, and I was like, I mentioned like, okay, so hop aroma, malt aroma, and someone raised their hand and they're like, how do I tell the difference between what's coming from the hops and what's coming from the malt? Like they didn't know, and it's so there's, it's just starting the journey at first. I know it could seem wildly overwhelming, to begin with. So it's just step by step, you'd be amazing how much you can grow in a very short period of time.
And Andrew, this screen, if we have some people that are just exploring their beer journey, they may be looking at that and they go, I'm out of here. Do you need to know all of that to actually get through your first online exam?
No, I mean, it's, no, not at all. It's just, that's a tool to kind of develop your vocabulary. So, I probably wouldn't even mention it, but I know that, you said you do the calibration beer at the beginning, and I kind of was a little resistant to that. You know what I mean? I was like, well, why don't we let people develop their own vocabulary and listen instead of listening to mine. You know what I mean?
Well, I actually thought it was a great idea. I do miss having a beer instead of my water here, but that's okay. That's okay. I think it's very important. The main thing I wanted to clarify for those that don't even really fully appreciate what step one is for becoming a beer judge, that whole chart might look like a little bit more than what you're prepared to even go through tonight. I assure you, right, the initial steps are nothing like that.
Well, yeah. I mean, it can seem like that. You know what I mean? Look, if you're new to this, which is what this webinar is for, like it can seem wildly overwhelming. Like just opening up the style guidelines, it's like holy moly. I remember, I still remember being with my wife and making flashcards. 12, 13 years ago, whatever it was. And just being like, this is impossible. How could anybody?
You mean like these?
Yeah. How could anybody possibly know this many styles? It's I don't know. It just takes. It's like anything else. It takes time.
Well, it does, but if you make the effort, it does pay off. These are actually, I had these out. I took the Mead exam in Providence, so these were the ones that I had on because I really couldn't find any resources for Mead. So these were the words that I was able to glean from some of the standards, so I could build a Mead vocabulary.
Yeah, it's the BJCP is very much about. It's very about having a growth mindset. You know what I mean? So the idea of coming in, if you have a limited mindset, in other words, you feel like skills are inherent, and you're going to come here and either you're great at this or you're not great at this, you're going to have a really tough time. So you really need to have that growth mindset, and it's very prevalent. You see it a lot. People, they get a score back. They think they shouldn't have got a score on the exam or, whatever.
Yeah, I've seen some of those.
Yeah. Everybody already knows it all, But.
Well, Andrew, let's get started. So where do we start if we are?
Well, let me bring up my some of my slides here. So you came up with the title three steps to becoming a beer judge. I didn't know what that was. So what the title I came was everything you ever wanted to know about the BJCP, but were afraid to ask. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So that's kind of what we're going to go through with this. So I know what it's like to be new to something, and so with that in mind, so first I want to say welcome. So congratulations on taking the first step towards a personal achievement. So if you haven't, if you've taken the online exam, or you think you're going to take the online exam, or you're taking this is your first step, that's a goal. That's an achievement. Give yourself a pat on the back for that. You know what I mean? So this is not an easy thing. There's really not a lot of rewards other than personal satisfaction with this. And I just want to emphasize that. Please, welcome to the organization. Can't say that enough. All right. So one other thing I wanted to say. So this is the beer flavor maps. I'll put a link on here as well. And here's a webinar on using the beer flavor maps. If you want to take a look at that. So maybe if these beer flavor maps are looking a little daunting, you have to pay for this, but it's not that much money. There's a webinar to the American Society of Brewing Chemists that I thought was pretty cool. So to use these flavor maps, and here's the 4-pack, and I'm not affiliated with them in any way, shape, or form. I get no money for this. I just think they're really good tools here. So that's what we were talking about before with the 4 different flavor maps as well. All right. So I want to take a minute, and me and Doug talked about this, and I wanted to take a minute and kind of address the idea of being polite. Doug, can they see my slides?
They can. Yes.
Okay. All right. So one of the things I want to say is something that really bothers me a lot is rudeness, especially on the Facebook group, where someone asks a question or they say something that they're doing, and just people just rip it apart, and they just they just try to tear it down. You know what I mean? I really don't understand that. And it's something that really bothers me a lot. And I'd like to start addressing much more, with the communication directorate that, I still remember a couple of years ago, not a couple, but a number of years ago, when I first started getting into homebrewing, that I posted on this homebrewing forum to give you an idea how long ago it was. I posted on this homebrewing forum, and it was my first question, and I wrote, "What grains should I buy in order to brew beer?" Right, not knowing that different grains make different beers, or even that maybe I didn't even know that there was maybe different how cognitive I was of different beer styles and stuff like that. So the first thing that someone posted underneath is they said, "What a noob question!" Exclamation point. Like you're an idiot, or something that like you're a moron, you're an idiot, you're a fool. What a noob question, you're an idiot. And guess how many times I posted on that forum after that? 0. There's really no need for it. You know what I mean? There's no need when someone has a question that you think is simplistic. Maybe it's simplistic to some people, but it's not simplistic to the other people. It would have been just as easy for someone to reply to my question and say, that's a good, that's an interesting question. Different grains are used in different beers in different ways. What in specific were you thinking about making? And then it could have generated a discussion from there instead of calling me a noob and a moron.
And Andrew, that's kind of pervasive as a judge. Isn't that how we have to approach a beer? That we really don't prejudge it because of its color, or any other characteristics, or either personal likes or dislikes. If I don't like light beers, but I really prefer dark beers, you don't score it down. You give every brewer a beer a chance, right?
Well, I think more than that, I think professionalism is greatly stressed in an organization, that your feedback should be professional. Mm-hmm. Not, why did you enter this beer? It's terrible. I mean, no, you wouldn't say that. And if someone does say that, you report them to the competition organizer, because they shouldn't be saying stuff like that. And I think the same thing holds true about the online forum. I've seen a couple of things that have really bothered me, and I think that we should all kind of recognize that, this is a personal goal here. There's not really a lot attached to it other than people trying to, attain some kind of personal achievement. And then we should help everybody to do that rather than assume that people have these nefarious motives, So that's kind of, I just want to take a minute and just kind of say that. For a second. So for the people who are on here, if you join the Facebook group, and I hope that you do, the BJCP Facebook group, I hope that you keep that in mind. And if you see someone, if you see something, say something. If someone is being obnoxious to somebody, call them out on it, in a respectful and a polite way, So let's kind of get started here, right? So if you're new to the organization, right? So what is the BJCP? And here's the website for the BJCP. It's bjcp.org. We are a nonprofit they are a nonprofit organization, right? So the Beer Judge Certification Program, it was started in 1985. It was a collaboration between the American Homebrewers Association and the Home Wine and Beer Trade Association at that time. So these two organizations came together and they created this body to evaluate homebrew and to certify judges, to kind of give them that stamp of approval to say that that this person is worthy to judge homebrew at homebrewing competitions, right? So the BJCP has a couple of different functions. Basically, and this is all right off the website. That they create guidelines is probably what they're most known for. So the BJCP has created a set of guidelines for a number of different styles of beer, right? So there's really only kind of for the most part, when it comes to beer, there's only really two sets of guidelines that most people cite. The Brewers Association uses a certain set of guidelines, mostly known for the Great American Beer Fest, and the Beer Judge Certification Program has another set of guidelines that they use as well, right? And those guidelines are necessary in order to create certain parameters to judge a beer by. And I know there's some people who have a problem with that. They're like, oh, my beer shouldn't fit into a category. And I completely agree. If you're a commercial brewer and you're not entering a competition, and you're just serving to the public, you don't necessarily have to fit into a strict box by the guidelines. You know what I mean? It doesn't really serve that purpose, and it's not really meant to serve that purpose. The guidelines are there so judges have some sort of reference when they're evaluating a beer, right? So this beer has to have some parameters to compare other beers against. What makes one better? What makes one not better? And one of the tools that is used is the guidelines, right? So the guidelines give kind of general parameters, general guidelines as to what that you should expect with that beer style. They're not rules; they're guidelines, right? So they're guidelines to help guide what you should be expecting in that beer. One of the other functions of the BJCP is that they certify judges. So they certify judges. They have certified beer judges, certified mead judges, and certified cider judges, right? So you have to go through a pretty rigorous exam process. And once you pass that exam process, then the BJCP certifies you as a full member of the Beer Judge Certification Program. And it kind of lets organizers of competition know that this person is qualified, right? So it shows that you're qualified. You have a qualification for judging beer in a competition, both commercial and homebrew. And then one of the third things that they do is they also create educational materials, right? So they try to educate the public about different beer styles and about judging beer and evaluating beer. Right. So these are kind of the main functions of the BJCP, right? So to certify judges, to encourage the bettering of judging beer, to encourage the improvement of that craft, to create guidelines. They also have created guidelines, and then also to kind of to educate just about diverse beer styles and different beer styles, mead styles and cider styles. Right. So that's what the BJCP is in a nutshell. Right. So if you didn't know. That's what they do, right? So they're a nonprofit organization. It's 100% volunteers that do all the work with this, which is pretty amazing and incredible when you think about it. There's something like over 7,000 members, I believe. I don't know the exact number. The website hasn't been updated in a little bit, but there's something like probably over 7,000 full members of the program, right? So there's a pretty decent amount of those. So how do you become certified by the BJCP, right? So if you want to become a beer judge, right? So now you know what the organization is, right? So how do you become certified by the BJCP? Like, how do I become a beer judge, right? Like, how do I get a spiffy pin and a name tag? So the exam structure. So if you're new to the program, in order to become a full member of the BJCP, you have to pass the BJCP online entrance exam. Right, I have a link right here, and so here's what you'll see. You have to create you go to the course catalog here, and you gotta create an account, right? So you go to the course catalog, and the course catalog has the online exams, right? So they have it for beer. They have ones with extended time. So if you have testing modifications and you can present those to the exam directorate, they'll allow you to get extended time. So they also have ones in different languages as well. So you get the cider exam, you get the mead exam, right? And then you have one in Spanish, and then Portugal, and then right, and then I believe in Common Cantonese. So and you have a choice of either taking it once, or they have 3 for 2. Buy 2 get 1 free, which I highly suggest as well. So the online exam. Here's a more of an in-depth description here. When I post these slides, you can click on it, right? So this is all off the BJCP website. The online exam, it's 180 questions, and it's pretty rigorous. I would highly recommend getting the 3 for 2 option and going through once, just first right off the bat, go through it just to give you an idea. So it's 180 questions, and you get 60 minutes to answer them. And they're true, false. There's multiple choice, and there's multiple choice. So like click all that apply, and that could be any number of them as well. And it's based on a couple of different things. So the 180 questions are based on they're based on the first 20 questions are true and false, and they're based on the program and ethics. Right, so it's basically based on procedures as a judge and procedures in competition, and we'll talk about where you get that in a little bit. And then it's beer styles, right? Different beer styles. You have questions, and then they have technical questions on beer characteristics, and then also process and ingredients. So brewing process and ingredients as well. Right, so that's what the multiple choice is on, and it can seem very overwhelming. It's a very challenging exam. The online exam was only implemented a number of years ago, and basically that's the prerequisite for taking the next exam in order to become a full judge. Right, so that's your first step.
Oh, Andrew.
Yeah.
I know we're supposed to save our questions for the end, but since I can interject one that may come up. And by the way, I totally agree with buying the three for $10 or 3 for $20, whatever it is. Get the 3-pack and use the first one to kind of figure out how it flows, and then concentrate on the second and the third. Yeah. But somebody asked me, what if you fail the third one? What happens there? And I don't know that I knew that answer.
I believe what happens is that I think you have to start another account and then you have to take it again. I'm not 100% sure, though. That's a really good question. If you fail 3 times in a row, can you just add it again and try it again, or do you have to start a new account? That's a really good question.
Somebody told me they thought might have been a waiting period.
Maybe there was. You know what? I'm not. That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, if you probably used a different email address, you could avoid that, I suspect.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of ins and outs. I mean, the organization is pretty large, so there's a lot of questions like that. If someone knows the answer, I'd love to hear what happens if you fail 3 times in a row. At that point, do you get a waiting period, or do you have to start a new account, or what the deal is? So that's interesting. Yeah. So sorry I couldn't answer that. So the second part, after you pass the online exam, you become what's known as a provisional judge. So you're not a full member of the BJCP yet. You're a provisional judge, and they actually have that if you go to competitions, you can actually check off a provisional judge. So the next step is you have to score 60%, at least 60% on the judging exam, right? So the beer judging exam is like the practical, in which you so it's a 90-minute exam. It's a 90-minute exam in which you're giving six beverages. So either if it's a beer exam, it's 6 beers. If it's the mead exam, it's 6 meads. If it's the cider exam, it's 6 ciders. And you have 90 minutes, and they come out one at a time, and you have to evaluate those. So you have to write out score sheets on those six beverages. And so you're graded, what you're graded on is you're graded on your perception. So what happens is they have the examinees taking the exam, and then they have proctors taking the exam blind as well. And these proctors are usually national plus. Usually there's at least one master involved in it as well. And the proctors are taking out and filling out score sheets as well. So when the exam is over, the exam administrator takes all the score sheets, they scan all of them, and then they send them to the exam directorate, which is an arm of the BJCP. And the exam directorate then takes those exams and they disperse them to graders. And so the graders, when they grade it, one of the things you get graded on is you get graded on perception. So how well did your perception match up to the proctor's perception? One of the other things that you're graded on is like it's put into like a formula. It's like it's like automatic as a grader when you get this is that you get graded on scoring accuracy. So how much did your score match up to the scores of the proctors as well? And so it has to be within a certain number of points. And then the more points you're off, then the more points you lose from your exam score, right? And then they check completeness. How complete is it? And then they also they check feedback, and they check your descriptive ability. You know, how well you're describing the beer, and how good is your feedback. And it's a challenging exam. On all exams for the BJCP, time is a major aspect of that exam. And so, so you have to practice. You have to practice for all the exams. So once you take the judging exam,
Andrew,
right?
Can I pause you for just a second? Now,
absolutely, please.
The judging exam, is that the same thing as what you hear a lot of people refer to as the tasting exam?
Yes, yeah, the tasting exam, right? So right, yeah. So the beer judging exam, the beer tasting exam, it's you're tasting 6 beers. You're evaluating six different beers in 90 minutes. So that's what they're talking about.
So is there a rule of thumb or just kind of without getting into all the details, because there's a whole nother webinar that you did on maximizing your score. Mm-hmm. But for the sake of someone that might have just passed, or let's say just has passed the online exam, and they see on the BJCP website that there's a tasting exam coming up in their area and they want to sign up for it. Mm-hmm. Is there like one or two things that you would suggest you begin to look into? I mean, do you find a study group or a mentor? Is there a book? What would you do?
That's a good idea. I'm going to address that in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a good question. All right. So just want to make sure everybody's kind of got this right. So this is for the beer, mead, and cider. You can be certified in all three. All three are separate exams. All three have an online exam and then a beer judging exam for all three of these. The beer is the only one that has ranks at the moment. So if you get a 60% on the mead exam, you're a mead judge or mead certified. Same thing for the cider. Now they also have something called an apprentice judge, and this is important to know because I strongly recommend that everybody just take the exam. If you pass the online exam, I always say just jump in and take the tasting exam if you have an opportunity that comes up to you. So the worst that could possibly happen is if you score below 60% on the judging exam, you get you become what's known as an apprentice judge. So you have a record, and you have a judging record, but you're not a full member of the organization yet. So they'll give you 2 years to take the judging exam again and to get over 60%. So the BJCP really, really wants you to be in the organization. That they want everybody to be, as many people as possible to be in the organization. That to give you an idea, also about passing, right? So, the number of exams I've graded a pretty fair amount of exams that I've only ever scored one below a 60. It's pretty difficult as long as you have a little bit of background, a little bit of judging experience, or talk to somebody who has judging experience. That you have just as much a likelihood of scoring under a 60 as you do as scoring over a 90, which is also very hard, as well. If you want to read more about the exam structure, I have it all right here. You can click on this link, and this link will tell you to break down what the exam structure is. So I highly recommend. Excuse me. Just taking the exam. If you have the opportunity to take it, just take it. If you pass the online exam, chances are you're probably ready for it. So beer ranks. So after you pass the beer judging exam, you'll get your results back anywhere 3, 4, sometimes 5 months. If there's an issue, sometimes it could be later, which does happen at times. You got to be patient. But if you get if you get over a 60, what the program has is it also ranks people. You have different kind of ranks. And then the first rank is recognized. So if you've scored between a 60 and a 69, that you will have the rank of recognized. At that point, if you take it again and you score over a 70, so if you have a 70 to a 79, your rank is certified as long as you have 5 experience points. So you have to have 5 experience points. So experience points can come from things like attending a CAP class. If you attended HomebrewCon, you get 2 points for that. Judging in competitions, being a steward in a competition. I'll talk in a minute what a steward is, right? So you have to have, but out of the 5 points, at least 2.5 of them have to come between judging. So the BJCP distinguishes between judging points and non-judging points, right? And in order to advance, at least 50% of your points have to be judging points, right? And that's how you end up becoming certified. You get over a 70 on the tasting exam, and you get 5 experience points, with at least half of them being judging. And the vast majority of judges are certified. The vast majority of the judges in the organization are certified. I forget what the percentage is, but it's high. It's got to be I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but I think it's somewhere around 70 to 75% or 70% or something like that. The vast majority of the judges in the organization are certified. And the other thing that you can do is, I'll show you this as well, that once you take the tasting exam, that the BJCP starts a record for you online. So on the website, they start a record for you, right? And then they'll give you an ID. You get a BJCP ID. You usually get that 4 or 5 weeks after you take the exam. You get it before you get your grade, which is kind of cool. They give you a BJCP ID, and they give you a password to access the member resources portal, and you log in, and you can check your judging record, and it has everything you ever did. Now, one of the cool ththings about it is that if you did things previously to this, if you did judging or stewarding previously to this, that you still get points for that as well. So you just have to let the ITRT people, the web developers know, right? So you just let them know, and then they'll give you pass credit on that on your record. So that's always kind of cool and exciting. So Doug, to kind of get back to your question here, so some starting study references, right? So so you decided you want to start studying, you want to pass the online exam. Here are some references for you. So the first kind of line of attack is the BJCP style guidelines. By the way, you can also get a lot of apps on your phones for this as well, if you don't feel like carrying this thing around, which most people do, right? So the style guidelines, you want to start going through, and you want to start processing the different beer, mead, and cider styles, right? So you go through that, and drinking. You find the commercial examples, and the guidelines have. If you look at the guidelines have the beer. If it's a type of beer, right? They'll have the beer, and then they'll have a description of the beer, and then talk about characteristic ingredients, and they'll talk about style comparison, and then they'll give commercial examples as well. So you can go down to these commercial examples, and you could find these as well. Now, it's not limited to these. These are not the only commercial examples you can try. There's a lot of other ones as well that you can try as well. A lot of times I check out who were the GABF gold medal winners in some of these categories, because there is some crossover. So I'll try that, as well. And then one of the things also with the guidelines, and I highly recommend that you do this with the guidelines, is that at the beginning of the guidelines, they have about 9 or 10 pages introducing the guidelines. So there was when the guidelines were previously released, there was a lot of misinterpretation, how they should be used and things like that. And people were imparting meaning when there wasn't meaning. And so what they did, which was great, I think, is that Gordon sat down, and him and Kristen England, and they went through and they created this introduction, talking about the guidelines, how they should be used, and dispelling some of those common misconceptions. All right, so I highly recommend that you sit down and you read the introduction to the style guidelines. That should be one of the first things that you do as a judge, right? So introduction to beer styles, and then introduction to the guidelines. And they have these again. They have them for beer, mead, and cider. And then the next line of attack is you want to go to the judge training study programs. So the Education and Training Directorate, they put together these really great programs, these training and study programs. Again, this is on the website, and you go through them, and it takes you kind of like it outlines step by step, lesson by lesson, becoming training yourself for the exam, right? And each one of these things also has a whole bunch of different resources on it as well. So you go to it's 9 parts. It's really supposed to be part of like or it's really helpful to be part as a guideline for a class. But you go through here and it has a whole ton of resources on here as well, right? These are all things you got to look at. And I know, again, this might seem really super overwhelming, and it can be at first, but you just kind of have to take it. It's like learning an instrument or a foreign language or something like that. It's like learning anything new. You know what I mean? You're going to have to. It's just going to have to take some time. It's going to take some time to process it and learn it.
So, Andrew, no one knows the links. So, are you going to share this presentation, and it includes the links? So. Yep. They can go back through it and click on them and get to all these places, because I know some of these places can be a little bit challenging to find.
Yeah. The website needs some work right now, but the board is definitely aware of that.
Well, so. but you've made this easy. If when they download their copy of this presentation, they'll be able to go through these and click, and they really won't have to go through that navigation. You've simplified that. Yeah, I try to keeping that in mind. One of the things, unfortunately, that happens to newer members that when you're trying to find this information and trying to find it on the website, that could be a deterrent. You know what I mean? So I fully understand that, and so yeah, that's why I put a bunch of links on here. I know you can't click on any of these. I will post these, and I will even take this document and I will make it public. I'll put it in a folder and I'll share it, and so it'll be also on the web as well. Great, thank you. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. So the BJCP also has a study guide, right? So you want to. This is the beginning. Definitely, if you're taking the exam for the first time, just go through the study guide here. The study guide has, outlines all the stuff that you need to know, at least initially, for taking the online exam and the tasting exam. And there's a ton of other resources in the study guide as well. So the study guide is really long. It has a lot of really great information. But they also, one of the other things is that they have additional reading here. All right, so it has all these different resources that you can check out. And again, I know this seems like crazy, intimidating when you're looking at like, wait, what? 27 books on, style knowledge, and like, yes, yeah, it can get that way. You don't need to know all of this in order to become like recognized or certified. All right, you don't need to go out and buy 30 books or 45 books as well. There's a few choice ones that you can use. Right, so. They're kind of covering everything. You got to understand that, like the study guide and all the materials, they really kind of encompass like all the levels, right? So it's not like, well, here's, if you're a recognized judge, like this is what you should use, and then if you want to go for certified, go for that. If you want to go for national, master, go. It's all together, right? So it could seem, if you're looking at something that is geared towards someone trying to attain the rank of master level judge, it can seem ridiculously intimidating. So just know that you don't need to know all of this stuff, right? That they just have it all for people who maybe want to be going for national and master. And then there's also a web version of that as well. And then go through the judge's procedure manual. So one of the other things is that the BJCP has a judge's procedure manual, kind of talking about what happens at a competition. So how you conduct yourself, what you should expect, things of that nature, right? So it's a good idea to kind of to familiarize yourself as well
with what you're going to be doing as a beer judge, right? After you take the exam, like the idea is to judge beer, right, at competitions, at competitions, right? It's not just, at least hopefully it's not just to get the certification just so, beyond bragging rights, right? You want to put it to some kind of use, have some kind of utilization for it, right? So the judge's procedure manual is a great thing to kind of go through and to if you have questions about, judging and being part of a competition. And then when you take the tasting exam, when you get your tasting exam back, you get this thing called an RTP, which is a report to participant. And on the report to participant, this is what it looks like, by the way. I'm not sure if you can see this. I don't think you are going to be able to see it. So the report to participant, yeah, you're not going to be able to see it. All right, no big deal. The report to participant on it, you can just click on this link. What it does is it has a list of readings on the right-hand side. And so it has like How to Brew by John Palmer, and I think it's Tasting Beer by Randy Mosher, and I forget what some of the other ones are. I'll read them to you. Let me open this up. And Dave Miller's Homebrewing Guide of the Complete Handbook of Homebrewing, Designing Great Beers by Ray Daniels, New Brewing Lager Beer by Greg Noonan, Principles of Brewing Science by George Fix, Brewing Better Beer, Master Lessons for Advanced Homebrewers by Gordon Strong, and Beer Companion by Michael Jackson. So those are the ones that they chosen about all those 50 additional readings on the study guide that it has. Those are the ones they chose. The administration chose to put for recommended studies. So I would put some weight into those. I would definitely have those books in your arsenal, as those ones that they specifically cite. And then the other thing you want to start doing is you want to start, looking at some of the looking at the BJCP score sheet. So this is a BJCP score sheet. This is what it looks like for beer, right? So you have aroma, and then there's different aspects of aroma they expect you to address. They always expect you to address all these things underneath here are not optional. They expect you to address each one of these. So talk about the malt, the hops, the esters, and aromatics. And if you're not getting those, you say esters not detected, or something like that, or no other aromatics. And then you have appearance, where you're supposed to look at the color. What's the color of the beer? How's the clarity of the beer? What's the head of the beer look like? How's the retention of it? How long does it last? What's the color of the head? What's the texture of the head? Is it fine beating? Is it kind of frothy? Is it like large, kind of airy beating? Bubbles. And then the flavor. So what's the flavor of the malt and the hops? The fermentation characteristics. How's it balanced? Is it more hop balanced, malt balanced, yeast balanced? What's the finish like? Is it dry, off dry, semi-sweet? What's the aftertaste? What's kind of lingering into the aftertaste? After you wait a couple of seconds, right? And then any other kind of flavor characteristics. And then you have mouthfeel, where you discuss body, carbonation. So the warmth, any kind of alcoholic warmth. Is it creamy? Is it astringent? Astringent means it's like overly dry. If you ever had like really tannic wines, that's kind of what they mean by astringent. And then any other palate sensations. And then you give your overall impression, right? And then you have these little checkbox marks down here. These are not optional. You have to hit these, and then you just kind of click these off, And if you're detecting anything on the side here, if you're getting any of this stuff. Right, you might not know what some of this is yet. So acetaldehyde or diacetyl or whatever, you might not know what these are yet. So don't worry about it yet. But I definitely look them up at some point. You click these off as well, and that's it. That's what it be. So you should be if you get your friend's homebrew and just go through and even if you're wrong or right, just go through it. You know what I mean? Just get into that habit. You can always refine it later. Like I said, it's a process. It's a long and it's a challenging process. You know what I mean? You really got to be someone who's motivated to want to do this. It's not for everybody. So, anybody who passes this exam, anybody who's recognized, certified, whatever, all those people deserve some respect and really deserve a pat on the back. They are showing a level of expertise. And then the last thing, as I talked about, is the BJCP score sheet guide. So as a grader, for the tasting exam, for the beer judging exam, that the BJCP created a score sheet guide for graders. So kind of like a rubric, right? So for graders, guiding them on what they should be looking for when they're grading your exam. So you should go through this because you should know what graders are looking for. So when you're ready to take the tasting exam, go through this. So you're like, oh, okay, so that's what I get graded on. That's what certain things are worth. Otherwise, you're just kind of shooting in the dark, right? You kind of want to know, what are graders looking for when they're looking at your exam, and that's what this is for. So you're going to go through this as well. Now, again, I know we're throwing a lot at you here, and I know this can seem very, very overwhelming, but you just take it step by step. If you're someone who knows a lot about, home brewing already, you really have an advantage here, or mead making or cider making. If you're someone who, has tried to travel and tried a lot of different diverse beer styles, or maybe, belongs to like a club and tried a lot of different diverse styles, you have a base already. You have a point of reference here. Chances are someone who's becoming a beer judge is, probably tried a lot of different beers, has some knowledge of beer and brewing beforehand. That's generally the case. So you're not starting at square one here. All right. So when you're ready to take when you're ready to finally take the judging exams, the tasting exam, the judging exam. So what you want to do is on the website, there's the official exam schedule. So you just click on the right hand when you go to the main website, it has the official schedule. So here's the schedule, right? And you want to find if it doesn't specify what it is, it's the beer tasting exam. All right. So you have the written exam. This is the one I just proctored. This one. So if it says written exam, it's a written exam. If it says mead or cider, then it's a mead or cider exam. If it says nothing, right? If they just have the name and the city, it's default is the beer judging exam. And then what you do is these people's names. When you click on their names, it takes you to their email usually. So this is you just copy and you just email them. So you go through here, you find one that's by you. And you want to do one a couple of months in advance, 3 or 4 months in advance, and then you email the exam administrator. This is the exam administrator in blue here, and you email them and just say, hey, I want to take your exam. And that's it. So if you're looking on here, and you might realize very shortly that there might not be a lot of exams by you, and that's sometimes happens. So that's why, if you find an exam by you, jump in and take it. If you pass the online exam, I always say, you're probably ready to take the tasting exam. Just jump in and see what happens. The rate of failure is very, very low. And then the other thing I highly recommend is join an exam prep class. So we held an exam prep class for that exam I just showed you that was in Port Jefferson, New York. And you can really tell the difference between when we hold a prep class and an exam, and then we don't hold a prep class and exam, and people trying to figure this out for themselves. This is a really hard process to do on your own. I had to do it mostly on my own. I was started out in a class, but then the person who was teaching it moved from the area, and I kind of had to try to figure this out all on my own. I know Doug had a similar experience as well. If you have a local beer club, a local club around you, whether it's a homebrew club or a beer enthusiast club or a mead club, whatever, right? Join that club. And your knowledge will grow very, 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 very fast. I remember before I joined my local club, I remember that my local homebrew shop, he said to me, I remember the guy who owned it, this guy Alan, said to me, he goes, you join the homebrew club, and what's going to happen is your knowledge is going to go from here to here in a very, very short period of time. And I was like, all right, whatever. And he was absolutely right. I still remember this, 13, 14 years later. And I still remember him saying that to me, because it was just wow. I couldn't believe in such a short period of time how much I learned by being around other people who were knowledgeable. So, get out there and join a prep class. It's really the best thing you could do to prepare yourself for the exam. And then join a local club. Social media is great. You have a lot of information and you have access to a lot of people. but it doesn't replace. It should be to supplement you being part of a club if you can, as well. So this link is the Homebrewers Association, and the Homebrewers Association, you just go here and you plug in your state, right? Let's say you're in Iowa, right? And it'll give you the different beer clubs in your area, and you can contact them or search them online. And usually they have a website or a Facebook page, and you can find out when the next meetings are. So that's how you find a club in your area. And then there's 2 Facebook pages. Well, there's one official Facebook page, I should say. So the BJCP, this is the BJCP. Here's a link to the BJCP official Facebook page, right? So here's the actual physical page. It's all mangled for some reason. It does work. It's my computer. And then you have Doug's page, which is the BJCP 101. It's another Facebook page, and this is specifically meant for people. And Doug's really good about this. Doug does a better job than I do with the BJCP official Facebook page of kind of monitoring it and making sure people stay positive, and it's kind of that supportive environment. Not that the official Facebook page isn't, but Doug does a really good job. I'm just giving Doug credit here with the BJCP 101 Facebook page as well. So these are really 2 good resources to join. All right. So your first competition, right? So judging your first competition. So if you pass the online exam and you're a provisional judge, most competitions will let you judge their competition. So first of all, how do you find when there's a competition around? Once you become a member of the BJCP, or even now, if you're an apprentice judge, once you're in the record, once you take one of the tasting exams, one of the judging exams, that you become part of a mailing list where you get emailed when there's competitions around you, right? Even if you're a provisional judge, you're put on an email list, and you get emails about when there's competitions around. But what you could also do is you could check the competition schedule. So the competition schedule is on the official webpage, and this has the BJCP webpage, and this has all the competitions that are around here. So you can find a competition by you, and they always have like some kind of usually like a website that you can register, and you just register. You go in, you register, and you register to judge. And so you sign up to judge, or you could sign up to steward as well. So if you haven't passed the online exam, you could steward. So what's a steward? So a steward is someone who is like an intermediary. They're like an assistant. They help out the judging tables, right? They're an intermediary between the beer cellar, which the cellar master has all the beers and meads and ciders for a competition, and then you have the judges who sit on the table. And there's a pull sheet for each table has like a pull sheet of the beers they're supposed to judge. And you walk over to cellar master and you tell the cellar master, I need these beers, and they give them to you. And then you walk over to the judges and you hand them those beers, and they should just have numbers on them and no other identifying marks. And then and that's it. And then sometimes that's what you do as a steward. Sometimes you do paperwork. You're also kind of helping the competition organizer with organizing paperwork and making sure that all the judges have everything filled out as well. And then a lot of times what should be happening is, unless it's a really busy competition, is the judges should be sitting down with you and kind of sometimes walking you through the process if you're interested, right? So I try to do that as well. So if it's someone who's interested in becoming a judge, I'll have them there. I'll usually always pour them. If I'm pouring a sample for myself, one of the entrants, I usually pour them a glass as well, hand them the glass, and then let them kind of evaluate it and listen to me and the other judge talk as well, right? But one of the things I got to say is that if you're probably nervous about the first time that you judge a competition, I got to say that most of the people who are participating in one of my classes, my club holds a couple of competitions, and that most of the people who finish that class, they sign up to steward. I tell them, sign up to steward. And they sign up to steward, and when they show up, I'm like, I'm just kidding. You're actually judging. Like, I force them into it, and they're just like, they turn white as a sheet. They're like, I'm judging? It's like, yeah, you're going to judge. You're trained. You passed the online exam. You're ready for this. Like, come on. So it seems, trust me, it's very nerve wracking at first. You don't look like a fool, and you don't want to mess things up for anybody. But just jump in, it's just, you should just jump right in. It's the best way to do it. There's no kind of like slow, steps, even being a steward to judge is it's a big step, right?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, Andrew, I have found, and I've only been doing this a little over 2 years, so it was only a little over 2 years ago I stewarded it and then started judging. But and I am full of dumb questions, but I have every judge that I've judged with was so, patient, and it's just not like, unfortunately, sometimes social media can be.
Yeah.
So there is really, it is the best learning experience you'll have sitting across the table from somebody like Andrew, and you just might have that opportunity with, it may not be Andrew, but with another very experienced judge, and it is the best way to learn. So
People love to show their knowledge, like there's very few times when people want to hear about the program and hear about beer judging. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, I know something, and they want to hear it. You're like, okay, great. You try doing that. You try doing that like a tasting room or something like that, and the bartender's gonna be like, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? So people love to share their knowledge. And I don't want to discredit social media too much. It definitely has a lot of value to that as well. But there are, like anything else, there are sometimes people who are less than cordial. Right. So your first competition, right? So what's going to happen is the judge coordinator is going to tell you what your table assignment is, right? So you get to find out what you're judging that day, what style of beer, what styles of beer or mead or cider. And then the judging is blind. You have no idea who the entrant is. You get a bottle, and the bottle has a number on it, and like that's it, right? There should be no identifying marks, nothing on it that would let you tip you off as to whose entry this is. So it's totally blind judging, and you get judged, and you get put in pairs. So you'll have someone else you're judging with. Sometimes you get put in threes, but that's not as frequent. It's usually you're in pairs. So it's you and another judge, and you're both judging the same beers. Some of the optional things that people bring to beer competitions is sometimes people bring coasters. I find them very, very useful, right? So you when you get the beer and you open it, you pour a sample and you take a sniff, and you put it down, and you're going to write a little bit. You can put the coaster on there, and you can trap some of those volatile aromatics. Also, if you want to like swirl the beer, which you should, to release some of the aroma, like you ever swirl a beer like this and it's like boom on your shirt, right? You can put the coaster on it and you can swirl it, and then you can like take a sniff of it without saturating your shirt or your score sheet, which will happen to you, by the way. It happens to everybody, right? It's like, oh, that's great. All right, flashlight. Some people use their phone flashlight to look at clarity, kind of look at the beer, look at clarity and stuff. Well, not so much clarity, but, kind of look at the beer and the beer color and stuff like that. And then you invest. Some people have really good mechanical pencils. I actually, I've been doing this. I've been judging now for, I think, 11 or 12 years. And I finally broke down about 6 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and I bought a really good mechanical pencil. I was just so tired of the mechanical pencils that they have at competitions. They're horrible. Like you just write it like snap, over and over again. So I invested, I forget, it was like $15 or something like that. And I got like an 8-weight, 8-gauge lead pencil. So a good mechanical pencil is really helpful as well. You don't need to do it, but it's helpful. Right. So you sit down, you're going to be filling out a score sheet. So the score sheets that I showed you before, that's what you're going to fill out. You sit down, you crack open the sample, right? You write all the entry information, all your personal information on the sheet beforehand. You crack open the entry, you pour a glass for your compadre, pour a glass for the steward, right? And then you sit in there, and then you're evaluating, right? You're going through aroma first, and then you're looking at appearance, and you're doing flavor, and then mouthfeel, and then overall impression. And you're filling out the score sheet, and you're not really talking while you're doing it. You shouldn't really be talking while you're doing it with the other judge. You kind of get to the end, and then at that point, you come to a judging consensus. So you go, what did you get? And then you say, to the judge, what did you get? And then this is what I got, and why. So if the guy across the table from you, the girl across the table from you, the person across the table from you, they're like, okay, I got a 38. You're like, all right, I got like a 32. So we're kind of close, but we're good 6 points apart, so why did you score at that? And I'll tell you why I scored at mine. You don't have to get super in depth. It doesn't have to be like a fight, who's right and who's not right. You just, you come to a consensus score, right? So the consensus score doesn't have to be the average. It could be whatever you guys decided you want it to be, right? So you come to a consensus score, and then you write down the consensus score, and that's the final score for that beer. So you got the 2 score sheets. and then the two judges talking it out, and then they scored at 1, and you scored at 1, and then you decide what's the consensus score, what's the final score for this beer going to be, right? And then at the end of that, when you get done with the flight, you get to choose what's the first, second, and third place beer, right? So you get to sit down. What's your best beer? What's second best beer? What's third best beer? Now, you don't have to go by score. It doesn't have to be what scored the highest. It could be, there's a lot of times I've gone back and that we've chosen beers that didn't score the highest, that we went back and on a second evaluation, we're like, you know what, this beer is better, right? And so you go back and then, you award that beer first place. So, maybe there's one that scored a 40 and there's another one that scored like a 38 consensus. And then you're just like, you know what, that 38 is better. That's a first place beer. So that happens. So you choose first, second, third place. You could also sometimes do honorable mention. People do an honorable mention. They choose the fourth place as well. And then sometimes you have this thing called mini BOS, so mini best of show. And so that happens when there's a table that has like a lot of entries. So let's say you have a table that has like 20 entries. And so what they do is they split it among 3 sets of judges. So what happens at that point is you have 3 sets of judges. They each put their top 2 forward, usually their top 2 forward. And then at the end, the judges, they try the top 6 and they choose their first, second, and third. So the 3 teams of judges come together. They usually choose one person or 2 people. They usually choose one person from each team or the top 2 judges. And then the top 2 judges or how many, they decide what's first, second, and third from that point. So you're probably not going to be doing mini BOS right off the bat. Usually it's usually you got to be certified at the very least to do that as well. All right. And that's it. That's kind of what we got. So we kind of went over what the program is, what is the BJCP. We went over what the exam format is and how do you get certified. We went over some of the starting resources that you should to begin your journey, and then we also talked about what it's like to judge at a in a competition. All right. So let's move on to questions. Absolutely.
And for those that haven't allowed quite this much time for the webinar, please feel free to run. This is recorded. If you've asked a question, chances are it'll still be answered. And as I mentioned earlier, you'll get an email with the answers. So we appreciate you joining us, but we're going to jump into the questions then, Andrew. It looks like you've got 10 questions. And we'll start out. All right. So where are the best...
Go over my time again?
No, you're good. So where are the best places to find BJCP learning resources when you must study on your own? There are no nearby judges, so you don't know any judges that can help you.
That's a good question, Doug. If you go, you want to go to the website bjcp.org, and you want to go to the continuing education link on the right hand side. There's a menu. Click on continuing education, and I would start with their judge training program, one of their judge training programs. So that's what I would do to start with those. And then also, I would also look at the study guide, which is part of that judge training program. Look at the exam study guide, and I'd start with that exam study guide, and that has a whole ton of resources in there as well. And then the third thing is you could also ask, to go to BJCP 101, and depending on what your level is, I've already read, Randy Mosher's Tasting Beer and John Palmer's How to Brew, and I want to get more into the chemistry of brewing with some good resources for me. And then you'll have a bazillion people who will answer you.
Yeah, you really will. And don't hesitate to PM somebody and I have found it's important to have some conversations with people.
Yeah, I do that. I get a number of people, who direct message me.
All right, our next question, and this comes from Matt. The finite details in each BJCP style and substyle can be quite a bit overwhelming and confusing. Do you have any tricks that help you with the styles for both the exams as well as tasting beer in an everyday setting?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matt. I think the important thing is that you don't try to memorize every single one of those details. When I judge, I don't use the style guidelines at all. If it's something that I haven't judged in a while, then I'll briefly look them over, like overall impression, just make sure that I'm on the right path. But for the most part, I don't use them. And it's not that I've memorized every single little detail about every single little style. It's that I just know the overall impression of most beer styles at this point. So and that's what I was saying to the students in my class. You want to get an overall impression of what to expect with each style. And you'll find there's a lot of overlap, and then you can start what started happening in my mind is I started categorizing things. So things that had the word American in front of it, right off the bat, I was able to make some connections, to it. If I knew something was a Belgian beer or a Trappist, in the current guidelines they call Trappist, they're changing that, but like a Trappist ale or something like that. I start finding commonalities with different styles of beer. And I just kind of know overall what's kind of the general parameters where it should fit in. One of the things that happens with new judges is that they think the guidelines are like the Holy Bible, and that it should be followed as strictly as possible. And that's really not the case. Really the first thing is, does the beer work? You know what I mean? That's really the first thing you're doing when you're evaluating a beer. Like, does this beer work? The recipe and the process, was it good? And then secondly, it's like, okay, how well does this fit within the general parameters of the style? So that's the second thing that you're answering. So long answer to your question is that it's not really a trick. It's that you don't need to memorize the guidelines. You should just get an overall impression of what each style is, and you're fine.
Andrew, I found, and maybe you've got a comment on this, for me, it was creating flavor memories. And so what I had is I had a lazy Susan, and I would pour small samples of various styles of beer and then taste them and then try and match them up with the styles I was studying at the time. And to keep, because at least for me, it wasn't instantaneous that I had a clear distinction between a British beer and an American beer. I had to develop those flavor memories. So I think there is an important part on building flavor memories, however you can get them.
Yeah, I mean, it is important. I mean, the only issue with that is that you lose that skill. If you sat down and you've tried 8, Weizens in a row and wrote down notes on all of those, a year later, how much you still, you know what I mean? So that's kind of the issue with that. So how many of these styles am I trying on a regular basis? Not a lot. But I kind of know, like, I'm like, all right, so, but I kind of have an idea, like, all right, so this is, what malted wheat tastes like. And, so I have a kind of general idea of, what yeast character I should be getting. And, all right, it's an effervescent beer and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? It's just like, you just kind of remember like the key characteristics of the beer. And then you kind of work from there.
All right. Great question, Matt. Next one. This comes from Edward. Looking forward to this. Are there certain styles that are better to focus on that are most likely to be on the tasting exam?
Well, they're not supposed to give you sours, so you don't have to worry about sour beers. They're not supposed to give you any kind of specialty, spiced, other fermentables. They're not supposed to give you anything like that. So you don't have to study those for the exam. I mean, you should know them, eventually. But for the exam, you won't get any of those. But other than that, not really. Usually they like to have. They recommend that you have at least one lager on the exam, and they usually recommend that you have at least one commercial example on the exam. But other than that, it's really kind of wild card. The only thing I would say is that regionally, unless the exam administrator is kind of a toolbox, that they won't choose styles that are like not really readily available in your area. You know what I mean? So like I live on Long Island. You know, I hosted an exam and I gave like, British Golden, Australian Sparkling Ale and a British, an Australian Sparkling. They started out with like an Australian Sparkling Ale and, like some of the other hard ones to get. I got a couple of them, but people would be like in revolt. You know what I mean? Like they would be pretty ticked off that I was choosing beers that are not really readily available in my area. So I would think that keep that in mind as well. But you never know.
Yeah, I always find it usually seems like that they've got one zinger that is particularly disgusting.
Yeah. Oh, that's the other thing. There's always one beer that's like really jacked up. So there's one beer that's supposed to be horrible, and there's one beer that's supposed to be amazing, and then it kind of runs the gamut from there. But don't keep that in mind.
No. Just be prepared for it.
Yes, but you'll be surprised that like it's don't be searching for that 45 plus beer. You know what I mean? That I've seen. I've been part of multiple exams that that the proctors have been have like tried it. Not wrong. They tried it and they didn't like it. So one of the exams that I proctored, I was with 3 judges. And we did we had Bell's Two Hearted Ale. I don't know, and they didn't think it was a 45 plus beer, but
well, that one might not have been.
It wasn't. Yeah. That was pretty good, but
good question, Edward. All right. David has a question. Is an 8-year-old certified beer judge, as an 8-year-old certified beer judge.
What are you drinking beer at 8 years old? How dare you? Call my parents.
Well, he's got a long career ahead of him. How much different is the new 2015 test versus the old 2008 written exam?
All right. Well, first, David, I want to apologize if you listen to this webinar because I guarantee you I probably did not say anything you didn't already know already. But this is an interesting question. I'd be interested to know why do you want to know it? But so the old exam, the old 2000 legacy exam was. Oh man, it was hard. It was torturous. It was, there was no prerequisite, and it was essays and tasting at the same time. It was like, I believe it was like 3 hours. I don't remember. I think it was 3 hours. It was like 3 hours, and you had to do like, I don't remember. You had to judge 4 beers, but also write like 7 or 8 essays or something like that at the same time. And I just remember sitting there like writing out an essay, and like the exam administrator came and put like a beer down in front of you, and you had to like sit there and like stop your essay and like evaluate the beer right then and write a score sheet and then finish with your essay, and then they would come and bring another one out, another part of the exam, and you're like trying to think and remember stuff, and they're feeding you beers at the same time, and it was like some kind of college hazing. It was rough. So I think that the new format is I don't know, I like it, But anybody who talks about how like the standards have increased in grading over time, that grader expectation has increased over time, which it has. Like those guys who had to take those exams who got master on the 2000. I mean that's impressive. But that was what the old exam was like. Yeah.
Well, I'm not that familiar, but I like the description of hazing. That's very colorful.
I was shot after I took that exam. I was completely shot.
Well, David, I think you just about stumped the teacher, so great question. We have one from Elizabeth. For those of us ignorant to different judge ranks, could you explain what the different levels of BJCP judges are? That's an awesome question.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. I hope I did that on the slides, but if you're kind of just tuning in now to this, so the different levels are. So you only get assigned a level. Well, after you take the online exam, you become a provisional judge. So that's not a level though. That's just like a designation. So we know what that means. So if you call the provisional judge, it means you took and passed the online exam. All right. That's not a level though. And then you take you have to take the beer judging exam, the tasting exam, which is the second level. And then if you score over a 60 on that, then you become you earn the rank of recognized. And that's the first level is recognized. So usually when people right after take this tasting exam, you're recognized level. And then there's different ranks after that. So you have after recognized, you have certified. So if you scored a 70 or over and you have 5 experience points, half of them being from judging, then you become certified.
So
And
Andrew,
then-
do the ranks buy you anything? I think the question might be more, why become a Grandmaster too?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the difference between I find with recognized and certified is that most recognized judges want to be certified. They don't like having the designation that I scored lower than a 70. So I think that it's kind of like, all right, we'll give you a rank. Like you got over a 60, we're going to give you a rank. But maybe you should go back and take it again and try to get over a 70 to be a full certified judge. That's what I assume. The other judging ranks, so National Master and Grandmaster, is that there's, you're recognized as having a higher level of knowledge and experience, and you get to proctor exams, you get to grade exams, so.
Well, and you get to do mini best of show or best of show, and
mini best of show. You're recognized as being, a leader, as part of the organization. Yeah, so it's a great accomplishment.
Good question, Elizabeth. All right.
And I should actually add, I'm sorry, and then the designation of Grandmaster. The designation of Grandmaster is there's no difference in scores between Grandmaster and Master. Is they just created this level to show people who contribute significantly to the organization. So someone who has like significant contributions to the organization, you attain the rank of Grandmaster, and that's usually done. You have to do it through judging, but you also do it usually through grading, and you do it through administering exams and proctoring the exams, and kind of giving back to the organization.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. James has a really interesting question, and this was voted up. This is a very popular question. So, as an experienced judge, I'll throw this out there. How can judges avoid the fault finder syndrome and end up focusing too much on putting beers down and ending up with most beers in a moderately low point range?
How can judges avoid the fault finder syndrome? It really kind of comes with experience, James. I think I find that in my opinion, people are usually, if they're looking for faults, it's maybe they're trying to justify a score. Like, sometimes, when you're evaluating a beer and you're like, I think this is like kind of in the 30 range, but you don't really know how to verbalize that, then what ends up happening is they elevate something more than it should. Like, I'm trying this Saison, and the style guidelines say it should have medium to medium high, lemony esters or esters that are, citrusy esters, and this is more like medium low. So I'm going to take off 20 points, so you find that people who sometimes are kind of inexperienced and they're not able to kind of verbalize, verbalize or quantify the score or their reasoning. They tend to latch on to the faults, and they tend to latch on to more minor things, and inflate their importance. So, how can you avoid it? You could avoid it by being aware of that and aware if you're doing that. So if you're highly concentrating, if you're looking over the guidelines and you're evaluating the beer and you're trying to say this is exactly fit that part of the guideline, and that's not really what they're meant for. If you find that you're doing that, you should be aware of it and then just self-correct yourself. That's how you avoid, doing it. overall, what's the totality? Well, Michael Fairbrothers probably said on your show this. I got this from him. What's the totality of the beverage? Overall, what's the good and the bad? Of it. So that's how I would say avoiding it is recognizing if you're doing it. Recognizing if you're nitpicking over the guidelines, and you're unable to justify the score that you're giving it, because it's hard. Especially starting out. Even when I was a certified judge, I would very frequently I'd be like, this is not working, but I'm not 100% sure why. I really kind of had to talk this out with somebody. And also recognizing that you're not. I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Well, I had to step away for a moment. I had a battery that was dying. Don't you find that many times, though, the other judge can kind of help balance another judge that's judging one low? I know it certainly happened to me and plenty of judges that I thought, this thing's at this end of the scale, and they're going, what? Explain to me why you think that. And then you kind of realize you were wrong.
it definitely comes with practice. And, I think the key to this, James, is that I think one of the keys to this is not being a know-it-all and asking yourself, can I be wrong? You know what I mean? That people get these initial perceptions and they're like, no, I'm right. This is what it is. I'm an expert and I'm amazing. And, it's the world of beer. And, you got to say to yourself, like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this person's right. And by the way, and this bothers me. If your rank doesn't equate more right, so if you're judging with someone and they're like, well, I'm a master judge, so I'm right. Well, like, no, you're just a tool. So like no one should be pulling rank on anybody. That's not your rank is not an indication of whether you're, you're more right than the other person. So if you guys are disagreeing on that much, then you pull over a third judge and they give you a third opinion. That should be the end of it.
All right, great question, James. This is a quick and easy one for you, Andrew. Are there dues or costs to maintain your membership?
Nope, totally free. And the exams are really cheap too, by the way. I should probably mention that. The online exam, $20 gets you 3 attempts. And then the tasting exam is, I think it's like 35 or something like that. I mean, you compare that to like the Cicerone exam. It's like the online exam is like 80 something or 80. And then the tasting, the certified Cicerone exam is like, what is that, like $400 or $500 something like that?
Well, if you only have to take it once.
Yeah. You only have to take it once. BJCP, and not only that, the BJCP exam, you have to take it a second time. They drop the price down. It's like $20 or $15.
I think it's 15. Yeah.
Yeah, 15. Yeah. It's like you got to take it again. It's $15. You know what I mean? So it's pretty sweet.
So membership costs are a non-issue.
Yeah. No one's avoiding joining the organization because it breaks the piggy bank. I'll tell you that much.
Okay. Next one, do you have to homebrew to be a BJCP judge?
No, of course not. I stopped homebrewing years ago. I make mead and that's it.
Next one. This one is from Alex. I'm a relatively experienced homebrewer. How much time should I really spend on studying for the online exam? I was planning on reviewing the study guide and the style guidelines for an hour or two and just giving her a try.
Yeah, I would recommend doing that, Alex. I would do it and get the 3 attempts for 2 and try that, and maybe you'll pass. I've known people who have done that and who have passed. They knew more than they thought they knew. And if you don't pass, then look at where it actually at the end of it outlines what the weaknesses are. It outlines where your shortcomings were, and you can kind of go back and you can kind of bone up on those things. But it's challenging. It's a challenging exam. If you pass it without doing much preparation based on just what your current knowledge is, then that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I would recommend the 3-pack. Just because it takes the pressure, you got 3 tries. It kind of stinks when you don't pass it the first time, and then you got to buy more.
Yeah, I took it. I didn't have to take it, but I wanted to see what it was like, and I took it, and I was like, "Holy cow, this is hard!"
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, and it's an online exam, so you can have some resources there. So
yeah,
it's valuable to just beat your way through the first one and then prepare for 2 and 3.
right. It's not a closed book exam. I think anybody who thinks that is got to be kidding themselves. Obviously, it's an online exam. That's why it's 180 questions in 60 minutes.
Yeah.
I think if you have to go back and look at some references to kind of double check, you can do that.
Yeah, but you got to be really quick. You got to
know most of it.
Yes,
Yeah,
you really do.
You can't look it up. You can't be looking most of it up, or even a fair percentage of it up. Like, you'll run out of time.
Yeah, you have to prepare. Well, good. I suggest the 3-pack and just dive into it.
Yeah, give it a shot. See what happens.
Next one. Elizabeth says, if you're already a certified Cicerone, do you think the online exam and judging exam require much study?
I would give it a shot. I would try it if that was you. If you pass the Cicerone exam, I would definitely give it a shot. The online exam, the tasting exam is a different animal. I've had certified Cicerones take the tasting exam and they don't do well if they didn't study, and that's because as a Cicerone, one of the things the program does not emphasize is fully fleshing out in written form the evaluation of a beer, right? So the program evaluates. They give you essays on beer styles. They give you essays on brewing process and ingredients. They give you essays on beer and food pairing. Your tasting portion is like, when you're writing out your tasting portion, it's very brief. Like, is this fit to be served or not fit to be served? Like, no, because there's high levels of acetaldehyde. The tasting exam is not like that. You are fully diving in and fully writing out this beer. So I would give the online exam a go. You probably do pretty well on it. And if you don't, go for the 3 for 2. But the tasting exam, you need to study. You need to sit down and you need to practice filling out those exam score sheets. I would highly recommend that. Just trying that off the bat, because I don't think you'll do very well. Not you. I think many would find it challenging. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, when I was taking a tasting exam last summer, there was an advanced Cicerone taking it with me, and he did not do well.
Yeah, he or she probably thought that they knew it already, and they didn't. It's a very, very different. There's nothing in the Cicerone program that prepares you for writing out a score sheet. Yeah.
Good question, Elizabeth. And it reminds me, I really should have posted this on the Cicerone Facebook page, but I didn't do it.
Even the advanced Cicerone exam, Doug, the advanced Cicerone exam actually wants you to write out your evaluation of a beer. So even the advanced Cicerone exam has that, where you write out you evaluate a beer almost like score sheet like, but it's still, their expectations are way lower than what you're expected to fully write out on a BJCP score sheet, even for the advanced Cicerone exam.
All right, we've got just 3 more questions. Greg says, are there any foods or drinks that one should avoid prior to judging?
Smoking is a big one. For the love of God, please don't smoke before an exam. First of all, you should be smoking. Not to preach, but seriously, so smoking will destroy your palate, and smoking before an exam is a horrible idea. But stay away from spicy foods, very flavorful impact foods. You can brush your teeth. So there's people who have thought that they shouldn't brush their teeth. Please brush your teeth. So yeah, you can brush your teeth. It's fine. Although mouthwash, I would avoid mouthwash. I would avoid mouthwash, but that's really kind of it. Eat a light breakfast, have a bagel, cream cheese, some toast, whatever, and then get ready to rock and roll.
Really good question, Greg.
Yeah, I'm not sure about drinks. I don't drink coffee, so I'm not exactly sure how that impacts evaluating beer. So, but anything that's strongly flavored, I would probably stay away from. Okay,
just 2 more questions, and these look fairly quick. Why does it take so long to get your scores back? And what do you get back from the test?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a long time because it's a pretty involved process involving all volunteers. So you're going through the exam administrator takes your exam. So they hold the exam, which is hard. It's a lot of organization. They take the exams, they scan the exams, they send the exams to the exam administrator. The exam administrator has to, they have a list of the graders. They have a schedule of graders who are up. And then they have to also prepare. They have this thing called an EGF that they have to put in data for each beer and information. And then they email that to the graders, and you have two graders, and both graders have to grade the exam independently. And then those graders have to then compare their scores. And if they're really off, then there's a lot of talking and a lot of back and forth that has to go on to make sure that those grades are comparable. And then it goes to the assistant director. So the assistant exam director then looks it over and then says whether they agree or not, and maybe they adjust scores. And then it goes to the exam director. And then the exam director has to go through it and make sure everything's okay. And then they close the set. And then after they close the set, then you have to wait to get the scores emailed to you. So it's a pretty involved process. And if there's a misstep in any one of those things, it can be a big deal.
So there's a lot of man hours that go into judging, and that's why it takes into grading, and that's why it takes so long.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, and Michael says, many thanks, Andrew and Doug. This was outstanding. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
We'll move into our last question and wrap up the evening. I know everybody's got other things to do. So this is from Merlinus, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Merlinus. In comparison to previous versions of the exam, which seem to have fewer topics, is the grading process more rigorous now? Are more people who try to become BJCP judges being screened out by the expanded categories?
This is interesting to me. This is the second question on the legacy exam. In the comparison to previous version, which seem to have fewer topics, they all have the same. Well, they're different. They're different exams. You can't really compare them to. They can't really compare it to each other. So the online exam didn't exist. In the previous exam, there was no prerequisite. You just sat and you took it. So what was happening is there was a lot of people. It was a challenging exam, and people didn't realize how challenging it was. And there were people who were not doing well. They didn't prepare, and they were failing. And what was happening is it was draining our resources as an organization. To take an exam, and you could see someone didn't do their due diligence and didn't prepare for the exam, but a grader has to now grade that exam. It's taken away resources for the organization. So they implemented the online exam, which is a prerequisite, which I thought was a great idea. It's one of the reasons why the passing rate for the tasting exam is so high. The passing rate for the tasting exam is so high is because you have to have a pretty good level of knowledge to take the online exam first. Mm-hmm. So was there fewer topics? No. The previous exam had a lot more you had to write and a lot more you had to do on the day of. It was a 3-hour exam, and there was essays involved. Is there more categories of beer? Yes, there is. So there are more categories now than there was with the previous guidelines. Does it keep people out of the organization? I don't know. I haven't heard anything like that. I couldn't imagine it. So someone looking at the guidelines and saying, like, what? There's more than 40 or there's more than 50? Like, forget it. I'm out of here. Like, my cap is 50 and that's it. So I don't think so. I'd be very surprised if that's the reason why someone doesn't want to become a judge. So if that answers your question.
Elizabeth says, thank you. I feel so motivated.
All right.
We have one more question, if you're willing to ask it. Gladys has submitted one. Is that okay, Andrew?
Of course.
All right. Can you retake the tasting exam in order to get a higher score and advance in rank? Or once you took it, do you advance in rank by getting judging and experience points?
That's a great question, Gladys. It's both. So you could advance by retaking the exam, or you can advance by judging and experience points. So I have a friend of mine who took the tasting exam and right off the bat got a 90 the first time out. And he didn't realize how impressive that was. He told me, I was like, yeah, right. What'd you get? He's like, no, really, I got a 90. I'm like, you know, you didn't. He's like, no, really, I got a 90. I'm like, are you kidding me? He's like, why? Is that good? I'm like, is that good? It's like less than 1% of ever get a 90 on the first time out, you know? And so
that's
anyways,
like ace in the SAT.
Yeah. He had no idea. He's like, oh, all right. But anyway, the reason I bring him up is he got a 90, but he was recognized, you know, because he didn't have any experience points. So as he's getting more and more experience points, then he became certified. And that's what he is now. He's certified. So he has to take the written exam if he wants to advance past that. So it's two things. So you can take the tasting exam as many times as you want. I took the tasting exam 5 times. I wanted to say that earlier and I forgot. I took the tasting exam 5 times before I hit master. And I'm super proud of that. I am more proud of the fact that I took it 5 times, that I had the persistence and the tenacity to do that, than I am that I scored 90. So yeah, you can take the exams all multiple times.
I'm glad to hear that because I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
But improved each time, and actually may take it again in February if I'm not happy with how my scorings go on some other things.
You know, Doug, I got to tell you that I honestly think that the most valuable trait to if someone's looking to be a higher level judge, that the most valuable trait besides hard work is persistence.
Yeah,
persistence is to me the number one trait that you're going to need to have, and you can see it when people post or people talk about like, I took it and I got stuck at X, and they don't know what they're talking about, and the exam is rigged, and I'm never doing this again. And you're like, oh, okay, you know what I mean? It's like, so
it's really a great learning process, and I highly recommend it. Well, I think that is our last question. Gladys, that was a good one to wrap things up. Andrew, I first of all want to thank you for another great webinar. Thank you so much for all this time and prep. I know getting all those links and pulling everything together was non-trivial, and you are going to share that with us, right?
Yeah, I'll share it. And if anyone has a question, let me know. You can reach out to me, or you could post it on Doug's Facebook page. That'd probably even be better. You get more responses from people.
Well, I'll share your email address in the follow-up email from the webinar. Is that okay?
That's fine. I don't mind.
Great. All right. Well, everybody that joined us today, thank you so much for your time. That was a long time, and we really appreciate it. We do have more webinars coming up. And if you can, again, this is all self-funded. So if by chance you can buy us a beer, that would be awesome. But meanwhile, I thank you mostly for your time. Your time is what we appreciate. As I've said, I'm on this beer journey, and I'm just glad you're going along with me. So with this is Andrew Luberto. Andrew, thank you so much again. I'm Doug Piper, Gourmet Brewing, and this is part of the BJCP Study Group webinars. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, Andrew.